of my favorite agents to just sit down and talk to. And that's what we're going to do. So, Jake, introduce yourself. Let everyone know who you are because, that's important.
Sure. Yeah. So let's see. Let me click this OK button for the recording. So been in the business 22 years, actually started in your field, mortgage. Started a private organization, worked my way up into leadership there, and then opened up my own mortgage brokerage. Actually, we opened up at probably the worst time ever, which was the end of 2007. So everything we signed was in the height of the market. And then the market in March, when we did our first transaction, actually crumbled beneath us. New Century got their books looked at in March of '08 and by the federal government, and things got really wonky really quick. So we had to shift and bring on real estate as an extra stream of revenue. And then that's kind of where I found my passion. I really enjoy real estate, and I transitioned in 2012 to where I'm at now, KW, and sold my business, my interest in the mortgage company. And now I lead a top team in the area. I guess we're top team. We do good business, and yeah, we're heavily
No
focused
biggie.
on skills, and I use an acronym. I came up with a hashtag during a initiative we had. It's called SAM I Am, so skill, activity, and mindset. So
Sam. Okay. And I know you've done another webinar with me on that, which I love because it is all about the skill, and especially what's going on with all these supposedly scary changes. I look at it as an opportunity. I look at it for an opportunity, obviously, for seasoned agents like you, but also for new agents, because who you surround yourself with matters, and which is exactly why we want to be able to have conversations like this with experienced agents that's going to bring you the skill that you need, the knowledge that has been successful for you to be able to just share with them. So I have some questions for you. Are you ready?
yeah, you know what's really smart is actually one of my new partners. She said, "I'm glad I'm getting it now because I don't know any better." I was like,
Right.
that's a really good way to look at it. So
What you don't know don't hurt you, right?
that's
You don't
it.
know what you're up
That's it.
against. It's just a new way of doing business, and you're always learning a new way of doing business. Every 9 months, there seems to be a shift here, and a new baby in real estate is born, and we just got to roll with it and learn how to grow with it. So, first
Absolutely.
thing I want to talk about is preparing for negotiations. So, can you walk us through your process of preparing for a negotiation with a buyer or seller?
Yeah. So as far as let me clear that. Just get clarity on that. So are you speaking of like negotiating with them in a listing presentation, or are we speaking of negotiating with them in like requests for repairs, or what's that look like for you?
So what specific research or preparation do you consider essential when you're working with a buyer or a seller?
Okay. I'm gonna split it up into two if I can, if you're okay with that. So
Of course.
first thing is I think preparation all starts with expectations. I'm a really big proponent of expectations. If strong expectations aren't set in the very beginning, I think it could definitely go sideways on you a little bit. So if I'm going into, let's just say, a request for repair, because we have to negotiate with buyers, we have to negotiate with sellers. It really starts in the forefront of the negotiation, or the listing presentation or the buyer presentation. So every buyer I work with, I go through the buyer consultation, show them our value, my value that I bring to the table. And then I also actually go through the process and I talk to them about, hey, when we're in the process of purchasing a home, one of the things is there's three negotiation areas. There's a first negotiation area up front. There's the second negotiation area of repairs. But I set really strong expectations. So when we are going through repairs negotiations, what we're looking for are the major items, the health and safety issues, all those things, so that when we put together a request for repair, I always go, hey, remember when we were talking in that initial conversation, here's what we're looking for when we're doing a request for repair. On the flip side of it, I always look at it from a win-win perspective. And I share this with buyers, I share it with sellers. For instance, with a seller, they get a hefty request for repair. I always know if when I see a request for repair on a transaction, if that buyer's agent actually set expectations in the beginning. Because if I get when I see an addendum come through and that page is full, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, this is going to be fun, right? So,
Yeah.
so anytime I have a tough conversation I have to go into, I coach my partners as well to this. Is like we're working on getting a roof replaced on a house, right? Seller had the roof report and left it on the on the listing. Appraiser got it, so now they're requiring a new roof. So we're actually going through a tough negotiation right now. And every conversation, before I have a conversation either with the seller or either with the buyer, I framework that conversation out. So what that looks like is I predict or think of what they're gonna come back at me with, right? Like, I don't want to do anything, or I don't want to do this. And I will framework my conversation into a very simple, hey, this is, and I just get really clear. It helps me when I write it out, because then I can deliver the message clearly, concisely, and confidently. Those are my 3 C's I have when negotiations go. Even scripts, objections, always be clear, concise, and confident. And by giving them that information and frameworking it, it helps me quite a bit for the negotiation process. And I'm always looking for a win-win. And one of the things that I always have in my mind as well is with them, what's in it for me, is explaining the why behind everything. So Mr. Seller, the buyer is actually requesting that this get repaired, which makes a lot of sense. The HVAC system didn't work, or it needs repairs, and that's a major item that when coming into a house, they're actually having to invest in. So if we do this, then we can move forward, right? So just really focus on making it a win for the buyers, making it a win for the sellers. I think is probably one of my biggest things with negotiations.
And you're actually talking about my question number 2 right now, which is, could you share an example of challenging negotiations that you faced and the strategies employed to navigate through the successful outcome? So when you're facing, like you're going through it right now, right?
Right.
How is the best way to handle that? Especially most agents they don't do the kind of business that you do, Jake. So they might have 1 or 2 deals that they have under their belt within the last 12 months, maybe. So what does that look like when you do face those challenges?
I'm a firm believer in putting it on the other person. So when I say that, is I present facts and then I say, this is what's needed. So for instance, we need a new roof on this property. Now, what happened was the listing agent, we said, hey, we're going to have an appraiser out there. He left all the reports in MLS. So the appraiser looks at MLS, sees that it needs a new roof, and puts that in his appraiser report. Now, I could have gone to him and said, dude, you left all your stuff on the MLS. It's your fault. Seller needs to repair it, etc. I could have very easily done that, and that could have gone a really bad way. Instead, what I just did was I said, hey, here's the situation. So the roof got called out by the appraiser. They're saying for this to move forward and for us to get to closing, a new roof has to be replaced. Can you talk to your seller and see what they're willing to do? And let's connect later tonight. So I just state the facts, put it in their corner, because he could have very easily said, I could have said, we'll pay half, or we'll do a escrow holdback, we'll come in. But even though, and technically it's kind of my fault too, right? If I didn't look at the MLS, technically it could all have been avoided if I was said, looked again at the MLS and said, oh, dude, you got to take those reports off. Appraiser's coming out there tomorrow, or whatever that looks like. So there's putting no fault on anyone.
Right.
Stating facts and putting it in their corner is my favorite thing to do. I do that with prices, right? So when I'm going on listing presentation, hey, here's what the market looks like right now. You kind of have three choices, and let me explain those to you. You can price it aggressively. Typically, that's what's going to happen is your house will typically sit on the market. It probably won't get a ton of activity if you want to go in that higher price. You can price it to market, where you'll probably get a lot of showings, a lot of activity, and probably get some offers, or you can price it a little bit under market, and that's where you're going to get quite a few offers. And here's how multiple offer situations work. We become in control. We have multiple people competing, and more often than not, you actually gain more than you would if you price it market. It's your choice. How would you like to price the home, right? So I always give someone else the option, and I never, ever say what we want. I just see what they're willing to do.
So you're going back to your clear, concise, and confident communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I absolutely love that. And I really like the what's in it for me that you were talking about, because when you can actually put that in perspective, it really opens up opportunity for you to really dive into it and look at it in that perspective. But it's not what you say, it's how you communicate it, right? We're in a relationship.
Exactly.
And so you could have easily said, hey, you left all these reports on, right? Hey, my bad. I didn't see this. You didn't see this. We don't want your seller to realize that this was a mistake that was made, right? So let's go ahead and try to negotiate this to make it work for the win-win, both of us. So
Yeah.
awesome.
And they
But
actually came back and said they would cover half of it. So we've got a new
wow,
roof.
there
And
you go.
the nice thing is the buyer knew it needed a new roof. So when it's all said and done, he actually could be getting half of it covered. So
Wow, that's awesome. Okay. Effective sales techniques is our next one. So, in today's fast evolving market, what sales techniques have you found to be most effective in engaging potential clients and maintaining their interest?
yeah, so I think sales, and I've always had this opinion, is it's about persuasion and influence, your ability to persuade and influence someone to help them move the process forward for them to get to their preferred future. Right. It's
Yes.
not, no, you know, you hear sales in real estate. It's not like anybody's going to sell me on a $500,000 house. Like, hey, this deal goes away tomorrow. Right. No one's selling me on a $500,000 house. However, I can really get clarity and get information around their motivation that is going to help them move the process along. So let me give you an example. A lot of agents that I see, especially newer into the business, they just, you know, they don't have a lot of practice. And what I can say is you get better with practice, with reps at the bat, right? So let's say, for instance, someone comes at me, I talk to a potential buyer, whether it's an internet lead, some type of lead, and their first thing they say is, well, interest rates are super high. Okay, well, most folks would probably respond back, well, hey, gosh, you know what? We got some great programs, 2-1 buy downs, 3-1 buy downs. You can buy your interest rate down, etc. However, that might not be the real objection. I call it, you want to scuba dive versus water ski, right? And so what I might say instead, and I ask a lot of questions to gain rapport, to understand their needs, and to really just understand how I can best serve them. Because at the end of the day, we're serving our client, and the way to serve them at the highest level is to fully understand what they want to accomplish, why they want to accomplish it, and how we can make that happen, right? So instead, I would say to them, well, let me ask you this specifically: what specifically about interest rates concern you? Because it could be their monthly payment, right?
Right.
It could be that they have a perception that because interest rates are high and how houses are high, that the prices are high, that the market's going to crash next year, and they want to save money. I don't know how many times I've heard that, but until you have clarity around that, questions is your best friends. Well, tell me more about that. That's my favorite question to ask, is tell me more about that. So he might come back and say, yeah, the payments are a concern with me. Okay, gotcha. And from there, I've got that understanding that they're concerned about interest rates and their payment. Now I'm going to shift right into motivation. Well, when you initially started searching, tell me where you were headed. Where were you looking? Right. Well, I was going to Fair Oaks. Okay, is Fair Oaks specifically the area that you're looking in, or are you open to other areas as well? Well, I'm open to here. Okay, awesome. Those are both great areas. Tell me what's taking you out that way. Well, we have my family that lives out there, right? Now you're starting to really get into motivation and really understanding why it is they want to make a move. And then you can take it back to the objection, handle it, and go for a strategy session.
I muted it, sorry. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. I like what you say there about really getting to know their need, because I think that's where people come in and they're just thinking about, okay, I want to get this deal, but they don't really
Yeah.
take the time in order to sit down to realize there is a need. And if there's not a need, well, we'll let them self-discover, right? And so versus trying to sell us as I can do this, I can do this, I can do that for you, we know they have a need, and it's really finding out what that why is. Always going back to the why, right?
And
So,
ultimately, the best way to handle an objection is in person, and always depending on what their objection is, to let the data do the heavy lifting is what I always say, is let the data do the heavy lifting. So when I look at, for instance, when I'm ready to, I want to meet with somebody, like if me and you were meeting, if I were to say to you, hey, Marissa, let's sit down and talk about the home buying process. Are you around tomorrow? Would that work for you?
yeah, absolutely.
Or or it's, hey, you know what, Marissa? It sounds like getting into Fair Oaks to get closer to your parents, get your kids into that San Juan school district, and be within walking distance to the American River is important to you. Why don't we do this? Let's sit down. Let's have a strategy session. We'll talk about the process from start to finish, including financing options you have to make your payments more affordable. We'll go through the process of buying a home and the market and what we're seeing out there. And most importantly, we'll find out exactly what you're looking for so that we can find you the perfect house. And if it makes sense to move the conversation forward, fantastic. If not, that's okay too. At least you have great information to make a decision when the time is right. Does tomorrow or Thursday work better for you? That's a much powerful conversation than me just asking you to sit down with me about the buying process.
Well, you just sat down and you reinstated everything that they told you was important to them. So you've taken it to a personal level at this point. So yeah, I'll sit
Mm-hmm.
down with you, buddy. Let's go. Okay. So creative negotiation tactics. We are headed into, with all this NAR stuff,
Mm-hmm.
people needing to be a little bit more creative. We don't know exactly how that looks. We do. I mean, our panel was great earlier. Yesterday, we had a great class. Monday, we had a great class. Like daily, we're bringing great classes that have to do with all of that stuff. But say we sit down, you got that client, and you're about to write an offer. Can you provide some insights into some of the creative negotiation tactics that you may have utilized to close deals that seemed maybe they have stalled?
So are you referring to, let's say, stalled because of negotiations, getting there and things like that?
Yes,
Maybe
getting there.
requests for repairs. Okay.
Well, let's just say getting there. You have to negotiate with and have that conversation with your buyer first, right? Then you get to negotiate with the seller. So, what is it what's like a challenge or something that may have stalled a buyer to place in an offer on a property that you can kind of get them to move forward with doing so?
Yeah, so let's just go to what we're seeing right now, if you're okay with that, multiple offer situations. Okay.
Yes.
So one of the things is, and I'll be teaching on May 1st how to get your offer accepted in multiple offer situations. So there's some creative ways to really, and hopefully Bruce isn't on here. I don't know, what, and I don't know how much
Hey.
of a fan, but there's quite a few things. You can do escalation clauses in your offers, right? Where buyers willing to pay $1,000 above the next offer. Here's one thing that a lot of people, they always put a cap on it. However, I don't. And here's why. If I'm in a multiple offer situation if I put a cap on it, the selling agent and the seller know my top number, right?
Right.
Here's the thing is for them to do a multiple counter offer, they can multiple counter offer me. And it goes back to my concept to put it in their court and they multiple counter offer me. I don't have to accept the multiple counter that they come back with. I can just say, oh, no, that's not going to work. So if my cap's 650, they come back at 660, then I don't necessarily have to accept that. We can not accept it, right? And we just don't respond or say that we're not good. So that would be one. There's some creative options too, is what's the one thing that sellers absolutely hate in the moving process?
They hate to move if they don't have a place to go. I don't know.
What about when you're moving? Like you have to get movers and then what do you have to do? You have to clean the house, right?
Yeah, right.
Crash out all the stuff you want, things like that. A cool thing that I've used in the past is having talk to your buyer first and let them know, hey, this is usually about an $800 to $1,000 expense. But if we put in our offer that seller has the ability is allowed to leave anything they don't want in the garage so that they don't have to move it or trash it out themselves. And then the buyer comes along, you just have it the day before, pay a trash out guy. I had a guy trash out a house for me for like $1,200, like a whole house. You put it in the garage, that might appeal to the seller just simply because that's one less thing they have to do in the moving process, right? So being able to do that. Obviously, VA buyers, there's the form, you know the form better than I do, the form where it's as long as your company or your lender allows for it, where they could just state if there isn't pest infestation, you don't have to do any dry rot repairs. That's a nice one too. Who pays what is a big one. If I'm in a competitive situation, and again, this is all stuff you want to talk to your buyer on prior. Maybe we absorb a majority of the costs. Maybe we are sitting there and we're doing appraisal gaps, right? If we're bidding up, we have an appraisal gap. Should it not appraise? Different things like that for the initial offers. I have a 33-point checklist. I'll go over the whole thing with you, making sure the way you talk to the agent. I'll tell you what, in this industry, one of the biggest things that I have found is relationships are huge. How you treat other agents, whether it's your listing and they're offering or they're calling about it, is going to make or break your career. Right. I have a lot of relationships that when I go to that person, I know exactly where I need to be to win out, right? And so that's a huge piece. How to talk to a listing agent is super important too. The questions you ask, building rapport with that listing agent if you've done a transaction with them before. And I'll give you an example of the relationship. I've actually had a listing agent where I had some of these listings get super busy. I had an underpriced one where there was like over 100 showings. We had 38 offers on it, right? And I had so many messages that I went to text this agent, and guess what I saw? I saw that I had never responded to their question, right? So I'm like, okay, well, gosh, that's on me. Hopefully we're good, but it's super important to keep those relationships and make those work. So.
And that goes into my next question, actually, ensuring satisfaction. How do you ensure that both the buyer and seller walk away satisfied from a deal? You can give an example, like what did you have to do to go the extra mile in order to achieve something like this?
Yeah, I've actually, back in the short sale days, I had, if you remember, the short sales, the sellers weren't getting any proceeds from it. So most of them didn't care about anything. So they would sometimes leave the house a mess, even though I was very clear that you needed to clean the house out and get all the trash out. One of my sellers actually left a ton of trash everywhere after closing. And I was actually embarrassed. And I've had it happen on regular sales too, just tons of stuff everywhere, as much as I even set the expectation. And I just felt embarrassed, and I just had a cleaner or a trash out guy, junk hauler, go over there. I paid for it out of my own pocket and had them clean the house out so that the seller was happy when they moved in.
Yeah.
That's an example. Or hire a cleaner to have them go and move it in. From a negotiation perspective, I would say, again, every party, if they can walk away feeling like they won, it's such a huge piece. So what I'll sometimes do is, and that's like the biggest thing too, is for anyone who has a buyer, a little piece of advice is when you get the appraisal, and let's say you offered on the house, and let's say the appraisal comes in higher than what the value is,
Yeah.
you never want to tell the other agent that. You always just say, hey, we're good on value. And the reason for that is you don't want them to feel like they lost out, or the seller to feel like they lost out. And also it could hinder your request for repair negotiations down the road as well, if the seller knows that the value came in higher and you actually got it for cheaper than what it's worth. Most
Yes.
appraisers are pretty good at that though. And really just focusing on being reasonable and be able to work with the seller, work with the buyer, make it so that they both win. And I think that's a huge piece. And especially if you have conversation around it. Hey, in this negotiation, we want to really focus on the things that matter: your HVAC system, your home, your roof, your sewage line from the house out to the thing, if it's, or out to the county if it's an older home. And we're not going to nickel and dime on the GFCIs in the kitchen, right?
Right.
So just really focusing on that and coming to a solution that both can be happy with and are willing to do.
Well, real estate transactions, and I'm sure you've seen all types with the amount of numbers that you do, but emotional intelligence is a real thing in sales. So, how has emotional intelligence played a role in your sales and negotiation strategies? And if you could share a situation on where being emotionally intelligent made a difference in that sales strategy, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So I think emotional intelligence is the ability to really look outside yourself and see how you're reacting or acting in a certain situation, right?
Yeah.
So I'll give an example that just happened the other day, and he didn't know it. It was a partner on my team. He was talking to an agent, and the tonality of your voice is super important, right? If the way you got to stay cool, you got to stay just calm, even tone when you're talking. And just like I said, shared earlier, was presenting the facts. In this situation, it almost like I could feel that he didn't intend it to be this way, and that wasn't his intention. However, when he was talking to that other agent, he was short, very abrupt, and it almost felt, if I was on the other side of that, I would have felt he was talking down to me. So I had to share with him after the call was over, hey, what you need to do is, on this next call you get on with this particular person, you need to watch yourself and catch yourself in that conversation, so that your tonality doesn't come off as condescending and just bad, because it's
Right.
going to affect the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed that too. A lot of the time, especially in our industry, it's like we're rushing, rushing,
Yeah.
rushing, rushing, rushing. We've always got something more to do. And
Yep.
being really present in a conversation is so important, because we feel it. Like, I can feel it if I'm sitting in front of somebody and their mind is somewhere else. Their eyes are looking out the door, and I'm like, this is an important conversation. Don't already see your way out of it. You know what I mean? So I know that that's very important in being able to even really establish that relationship in order to grow, whether it's with a buyer, with a seller. Agents relationships are so important, because you're working together. When I do a buyer's consult, or I'm sorry, when I call the listing agent to help my clients get their offer accepted as a lender, that's the first thing I do. I tell them, we're partners, like you, me, the buyer's agent, the title company. We need each other to communicate and work together in order to make the deal work. I don't want the seller upset with the listing agent. I don't want my buyer upset, right? So that communication is just very important when you're when you're having it. I agree.
And I used to actually get upset at that when a lender would call me. I was like, well, dude, okay, right? But through the years, that's just growth, right? Because we all
Yeah.
have to get better. I was like, hey, I really appreciate you calling me and sharing with me what the qualifications are. And
Well,
because I used to see it as, oh, this guy's wants to try and get my business. I don't, like you said, we're busy. I'm trying to get off the phone to get on to the next thing, but take the time to just converse with the person. And even if they say, hey, hey, I really appreciate your time and I really appreciate the information. It's great. So thank you.
and I wanted to feed off of that. So, like I had an agent really, really, really upset, and I felt my communication was really, really, really good. And I was like, okay, the listing agent is upset because the seller's upset. But why is the
Mhm.
seller upset? Why? And the whole reason why was because Mr. Cooper, the lender, that he needed to get a payoff. It was hard to get through. He had spent 3 hours and it had to do with a close of escrow date. If I would have known that versus rushing one day, right, that the agent wanted to, I could have said, hey, let's go ahead and do the payoff date this way. So the seller wouldn't have had to get back on the phone for another 3 hours. It could have been prevented. You guys, it's communication. Very simple, but it
Mhm.
takes it for all parties. Like I didn't understand that, but I could have helped give a better scenario for that agent to be able to go talk to that his customer, right? So that he wouldn't have had that 6 hours of wasted time and a headache, right? So
Yeah,
very, very important. It will
I
help with
think.
the
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
it
I thought
will
you had
help with
stopped.
the yeah, I was just gonna say it'll help with the emotional part of things.
And I always remember two things: is one is put myself in somebody else's shoes, right? In fact, I even had that this morning where I was really frustrated, really, and then I go, okay, let's stop, let's ask a lot of questions and figure out what this person's going through before I cast judgment on them, right? And then the other piece is too is everyone has different lenses that they see the world through, and you got to understand that perception, their perception is their reality. So however you present yourself, however your, like, even tonality or things like that, they may see it as something else, even though your intention is. And I've had plenty of conversations where I've shared with somebody, hey, that wasn't my intention. And I apologize that it came off that way. Here's what I was trying to do. Right.
Okay. Maintaining momentum in stalled negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
What techniques do you employ to maintain momentum to be able to revive interest in negotiations that have stalled?
Yeah, it's a communication on that. So what I portray to the whoever I'm talking with is, hey, look, it's an obstacle at this point, and we just need to figure out how to get around it, right? If everyone, because you, the seller, my buyer, and me, we want to get this to the finish line. So what do you think? Or could you go back to your seller and just see what they feel would be a fair solution to this issue we're having? And it's just clear communication, reminding everyone involved that we all want to get to the same place, and we want it fair and equitable for everyone. And we how do we get there? Like, give me some get a few ideas from the sellers. I'll come back with a few ideas from the buyers, and maybe we can put something together that works.
So teamwork, the clear, concise, confident communication again. Perfect. Okay. So I know you do a lot of social media stuff, YouTube and all that fun stuff. So how do you leverage technology and social media to enhance your sales process? What kind of impact has this had on you in your business?
So if we do technology, so I'll give you a couple pretty affordable technology pieces that are great pieces. There's one called High Note, HIGH notes.io. High Note. There's loom.com, which is very similar to BombBomb, but very much more affordable. Okay. And so a few things I do. is I use Loom all the time. I record it. There's an app. I pull it up on my phone when it's one of my clients' birthday. I record a video. Hey, it's Jake. Happy birthday. You title it, you copy the link out of the app, and you text it to them, and your face pops up, and you're talking to them. Like it shows a preview of the video. So it's fantastic. It works that way in emails too. So sometimes even when, let's say for leads that maybe they gave me a wrong number, but their email, they're looking at their listing alerts or their market reports, I'll send them a video as well and be like, hey, just wanted to let you know there's someone behind this email that you're getting all the time. I'm a real person. I would really love to help you through your journey of this home ownership process. Do me a favor, just reply back with your phone number. I'll shoot you a text and let's connect and see what we can come together on, right? That's one piece. The other piece is with the high note, there's a lot of build outs you can do. So I'm a big proponent of using that high note in various different ways. One is once someone goes into a pending contract, they get an email from me, and it's a video that basically says, hey, it's Jake DeRosa with the DeRosa team. Congratulations, you're in contract. Here's what's going to happen next. We're going to get some inspections. I talk about the major inspections we want. Boom. And then I actually attach my worst copy of every one of those inspections. So like when they get theirs, it's like, looks really good. So I give them a home inspection where the house is almost falling down, and right, not to scare them, but to, so they can see what one looks like. Check them out. These aren't yours. Check them out. This is the format they'll come in, etc. So really educational pieces. High Note's a static website. You can build things out. You can add video. They can watch it right on the piece. They can you can have your other stuff on there. And like with High Note, I'll do an open house. And what I'll do is I will link I have my own, IDX website stuff. I'll put the link of the house in my High Note. And then below it, I'll put a link to the school districts. Then below that, I'll put 4 other homes that are similar in price, square footage in the area. And then what I do is at the open house, before they take off, hey, you know what? Was this a fit for you? No, not really. Great. Well, I'm going to send you a link and I'm going to shoot it over to you. And what it does is it has 4 other homes that are similar in size, price, and square footage. And I want you to take a look at those. And when I'm done with this at 4:30, I'm going to give you a quick call and see if you liked any of them, because I can get you into the house over there. What it does is I say, what's the best number to text you at? Because texting has become so such the way of communication that I get their right phone number right there. Because sometimes, just like anything, when they first meet you, it's a brush off. They may sign in or give you their information, but sometimes it's a wrong phone number, right? So when you text them you get the right phone number because you're giving them value. And you can even say, hey, I've got some more information. Here's all the school districts. I got local shopping around here, but it's just like a static web page. It's fantastic. If you go check it out, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Thank you for sharing that, because for me, if you're a new agent and you're utilizing a platform like that, it makes you look like you know your stuff, and your professionalism just went up like 10 notches. So it's
fantastic. $29 a month, so super cheap.
Yeah, and I use Loom. I love it. I do it to break down the cost down. I've hosted webinars on it. I do my cost estimates to really go over, because you guys, time management is so important in our business nowadays. And it is important to be able to get out in front of your clients, right? But like on the lending side, we're stuck behind a computer so much, doing estimate after estimate after estimate. We're sitting for an hour and a half to go over each item. So when I can go over those, record it, they can go back to it, they can see it. Like, it's amazing to be able to have these types of skills, these tools that Jake is sharing with us right now.
So it's something they can go back to and like
absolutely.
rewatch over and over. That's
recording. Nice. Yeah. So, Jake, what advice do you have for new agents? What is a key piece of advice that you would offer to new agents that are looking to develop their sales and negotiation skills? I know you're big on script practicing, all of that fun stuff, but what's a key piece of advice you have for them in developing skill?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece in our business that tends to lack sometimes is the passion for growth and the passion for really being a professional or student of our industry. And so when I say that, script practice is part of that, but not just script practice. I was actually talking about it today on the panel, and I was listening to Ed Milet over the weekend, and I always could never figure out what this was. And what it was I used to compare it to old school, where Will Ferrell, he, if you remember, he's at that debate with that super smart political guy, and they ask a question, and he just like crushes it, and then all of a sudden he shakes his head, and he's like, "Oh, what happened?" Right? And he comes out of this whatever trance he was in. Well, Ed was talking about it. And what happens is when you get super passionate and obsessed with something, whether it's the market, whether it's your conversations, whether it's sales or persuasion, what happens is you start studying it and you start practicing it. And what those are called he called them beta bursts. So in 3 or 6 months, all of a sudden you will have a beta burst where your knowledge and skill set jumps exponentially and you get really good at it. The way I compare it to is essentially like where you're sitting there and someone throws something at you and you're like, oh, blah, 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 right? And you're like, whoa, that was really good, right? But it's because you really practice on that. So my suggestion is get really good at asking questions. We have 2 ears in one mouth for a reason. Get really good at growth and just studying the market, understanding why things happen, so you can talk to people more educatedly, have conversations, know what drives the mortgage market. Like I know exactly what drives the mortgage market. I know what drives the mortgage-backed securities up and down, right? So understanding the economies, things like that, so you can have smart conversations, and be a chameleon, be able to connect with and talk with people of all makes, walks, everything. And one thing that is interesting is understanding connection versus rapport. So rapport, or commonality versus rapport, commonality versus rapport. Commonality is you like the 49ers, I like the 49ers. You like fishing, I like fishing. Rapport is a lot deeper, and that's what you want to build. Is rapport is when I know your dreams, your aspirations, what it is you want to do, what's the why behind it. You will become very much more successful by understanding that about all your clients and really helping them at the highest level. That's what it takes. Real estate in its basic form is relationships, and relationships continuing. I call my database my data bank, because until I deposit into it, I can't withdraw from it.
Right.
If I don't put any deposits into them, to this data bank of mine, whether it be providing value, things like that, or a phone call just to check in and say, hey, how is everything doing? Like right now, I would be calling everyone I know, first understand it at a high level, the NAR settlement, and say, hey, there's a lot of stuff in the news lately about real estate. I just wanted to call you and see if you had any questions about it that I could answer.
That's awesome. And you know what,
you're the trusted professional, right?
Yeah. A lot of agents are looking to get out of the business right now. Most of the agents that I talk to, recruiting, I don't have time to put into it, right? It's you guys, you are only going to get what you put into something. That's just life in general, right? Whether it's personal or your business, what you put in is what you get out of it. And if you don't have the time, well, listen, you need to get a clear answer on what you want for your life and your future, because you make time for the things that are important to you. And where do you see yourself? And he said it when he nailed it all. You nailed it for me when you said, you set it for your clients, but it's also for you as a person, understanding your why, knowing what you want to get out of something, right, Jake? And so
Mhm.
if you don't have time, you guys, Keller Williams is a place for opportunity. If you can't do it on your own, we've got referral programs that you could go into. Jake is always hiring for his team. We've got amazing teams, and we have the systems, we have the models to make it work in your business. Jake, tell us what you do for your team. If somebody is just struggling on their own, we're only good at what we put in. Like there's things that I love to do in my business, and there's things that I'm not, 100% perfect in all areas. There's things that I lack, and we all do as a people. But that's where a team atmosphere comes in. What I can't do, my partner picks up for me. So talk about your team a
Mhm.
little bit, and if somebody's interested in joining your team, what that might look like.
Yeah, I think like when I look back at my journey and why I started a team, because I'm partnered up with Ben Kinney, right? So my business partner is Ben Kinney. I consider every person on my team a partner. And when I'd say that, the reason I say that is because when someone partners with us, I make a commitment to help them get to where they need to be. But they make a commitment to show up in the way that they need to get to where they need to be, right? So I think we're all leaders. We're leaders of ourselves, leaders of our families, leaders of our communities, leaders of our churches, leaders wherever. And when I partnered up, the reason I did so was there was a lot of leadership loneliness, right? This just solo, you can really feel out on an island. And so there was what I called leadership loneliness. And I want to be around smart people. I want to be around smart people who are motivated. Because if you ever notice the people, and it's a saying, right? The people you surround yourself with will determine your future, right? You rise to the level of the people you're surrounded with. So why not be surrounded with incredible people with aspirations, things like that? Now, as far as when someone comes, you said comes to me, they're struggling or something like that. Was that a question? Is that correct?
Well, a lot of agents are struggling in their business, right? I know,
Yeah.
what your standards are for your team specifically,
Hmm.
but say somebody's just not, they don't have the skill set required to do this on their own. They need the team, they need the leadership. I want you to talk about what your team has to offer to an agent that might want to interview for your team.
Well, I think the biggest piece of why we obviously, it's no secret, we have an 85% turnover ratio in 5 years in this industry.
Right.
And what the reason for that and I've watched it time in and time out, is priority, right? So when someone's out on their own, a lot of times they don't know how to align their priorities to be focusing on the most important things first, or they have so many things pulling themselves away from the most important thing. There's two types of activities in real estate. One is lead servicing and income producing and income servicing. So if I'm an agent and I have to, we have TCs, I get that, but I'm trying to work on my marketing, or I'm trying to work on this and this and this. There's a lot that goes into it. Trust me, I have to figure that out. I still, like, what keeps me up at night is how to get ahead of the competition tomorrow. That's literally like how can I make things easier? How can I make them win more with our partners, right? Whether it's connecting with something, building out a new piece, right? So there's a lot. If you stay in 5 areas of your business, you will succeed. It's lead generation, lead follow up, script practice, going on appointments, and negotiating contracts. Those are the 5 areas you need to stay in as a real estate agent to work at the highest level. And mind you, too, I mean, I came into the industry with a background in mortgage, and every year I did 26 or more transactions, which isn't a ton. I think my biggest year was 43 myself, which isn't a huge number, but it was my cap at that time. But it's just really focusing. And when I sit down with someone, I just say, hey, what do you want to accomplish? Because everyone has different goals. If someone wants to make 100 grand a year, cool. I can make a plan for that, right? If someone wants to make, earn $60,000 a year, hey, we have a plan around that, whatever that looks like. But when you look at it from an individual perspective, a lot of times the hardest person to stay accountable to is yourself.
Yeah.
So surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded, accountable to each other is, I think, a huge thing. And here's the other thing. This is what I say often. I says, it takes less to get your real estate license than it does to become a barber. I don't know if you know that. A barber has more schooling, shadowing, things like that they're required to do to get a barber license. So, and you have the ability to make as much, if not more, than doctors, attorneys, and things like that. Why wouldn't you show up? Dude, the opportunity is incredible. There's no other industry in our world where you can earn a substantial income, which could truly change the trajectory of your life, whether you're investing into other real estate property, you get eyes on investments first, all those things. So I'd say it's just, putting your efforts into the right things, putting your efforts into the things you're good at, and being coachable and being ready to grow. I think that's the biggest thing.
Thank you, Jake. You're amazing. Thank you so much for taking time to come and talk. I know how valuable your time is, and I really appreciate every moment that you give to me. I do. And you're always
Obviously, thank you. I pay her to say that. So, any questions anybody have while we're here?
What questions do you guys have? Use this as opportunity.
Give me an objection you're running into anything. I'm pretty well versed on a lot of things. Go for it.
When you have a listing and buyer client, so they're listing their house and they're gonna buy with you as well, do you do those presentations together at the same time, or do you separate them? Because I mean, for the most part, it's a conversation, obviously, but do you kind of separate that out, or do you make it like one long sit down?
Usually I'm going to start with figuring out where they want to go and what that motivation is, right? Why they want to get there. That's always going to be the most important, because they're usually people are moving away from pain, right? Versus going toward, or sometimes they go towards pleasure, but I try to find that out. I will talk on each piece of it, right? Like, what are we going to do to help them sell their house for the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the least amount of hassle? And how are we going to work to find them the right property that makes sense for them and show the value on that end too? So I do a separate but I'll do it all in a sit down, right? We'll have conversation. Usually when I'm finished up with one, they typically know they want to work with me or not, right? And so that's a lot of times how that typically works. And really, it's a majority of my presentations is finding out about them. If you're the one doing the most amount of talking, you're doing it wrong, because then you're just trying to sell them. Like, nobody wants to be sold. But if you really figure out and find out what they want, and then also, like, for instance, today I gave 3 of the best questions that I ask in front of a listing before going on a listing presentation. First thing I ask is the most important one is, what are the 3 things you're looking for when you hire your next agent or team, right? Because they're going to tell me right there how they want me to sell them, really. I mean, if we're persuade them, right? We want a track record of success. We want marketing, right? Boom. So then I'm going into those areas heavy and not really worrying about too much other stuff. I then ask them, are you interviewing other agents? And then if they are, great. Who are you interviewing? Right. A lot of agents don't ask that because they're afraid that by asking that question, it might spur the idea in their head to go interview other agents. I'll give you a newsflash. It's not going to. If they're interviewing other agents, they're going to interview regardless. They already thought about it before you even had the conversation with them, right? Third thing is, curious, what homes or houses similar to you are you aware of that sold in your neighborhood, right? I always know Zillow value before I go out there, but I also ask them about that, because the one they're going to tell me about is what they're probably looking to get for their house, right? So now I'm armed with what they think their house is worth, what they want to, what are the 3 things they're looking for in a new agent, right? And who I'm going up against. That's a lot of information to craft your presentation around and have a really good presentation with them.
That's good. Jake, can you list your 5 again? It was lead generation, lead follow-up,
Yeah.
script practice. And then I
Yeah,
forgot.
lead generation, lead follow-up, just call it conversation mastery, going on appointments and negotiating contracts, writing contracts or negotiating contracts on the seller's behalf. Those are your 5 areas to really focus on staying good.
Any other questions for Jake, you guys? Okay,
What,
well, oh, hi,
Go
Susanna,
ahead.
go ahead.
hi, a quick question. What would be a
Yeah.
good, like a good follow-up question, like after a open house for people who, you know, came
Really good
in?
question.
Yeah, how do you reach out to them?
Super good question. So I say you can follow up until the cows come home and not move anybody forward. What I like to do is be very specific on my follow up. So let's say I had a client come in. I live in Fair Oaks, so I'm just going to use Fair Oaks as the place where I held my open house, and I would just call Marissa up. Hey, Marissa, and it also would depend too. At the open house, I like to set a next course of action. Right, let them know, hey, I'm going to reach out to you after my open and see if you want to see any of those houses, or I'm going to follow up with you if I don't set the appointment. I always try and set a consultation at the open house, at least one. And so what I'll do is call them up the
Let's
next
script practice.
Yeah.
Script it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Marissa, Jake here. We met at the open house in Fair Oaks. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Jake?
Doing fantastic. Hey, thanks for coming by. I know you had a lot of things happening over the weekend. Let me ask you this. Did you go and see more houses around the area?
I did go see a couple,
Okay.
but I'm looking for a place with a barn.
Gotcha. Okay. So are you specifically looking in Fair Oaks, or are you open to other areas as well?
I'm open to other areas.
Okay. So you're looking for a place with a barn. That's pretty unique. Tell me more about that.
Well, I have horses, and so, I want to keep a place for my horses during the winter, and I don't like dealing with the muddy mess.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely. I had when I was young, I'm afraid of horses. My dad put me on a pony at the park and I turned sideways and he wasn't paying attention. So I'm definitely afraid of him. But let me ask you this, Marissa. So you're open to other areas. Now, Fair Oaks, there's a few places that I've seen with barns. Are you familiar with the other areas around the Sacramento and Placer counties that are pretty prevalent with horse properties?
I'm actually relocating, so I'm not too familiar with Sacramento County. I'm more familiar with San Joaquin County, but I want to be in
Gotcha.
Sacramento for work.
Gotcha. Sacramento proper. Yeah, for sure. Now, the house we were at was about 800,000. Was that specifically kind of the price point you're trying to stay in, or you have flexibility, or what's that look like for you?
I can go to around 950.
Okay. And you had you said you were in Fair Oaks and you said other areas. Do you have specific areas you're thinking of?
I really like the Auburn area.
Oh, Auburn's awesome. Auburn's awesome. Well, and I'm going to shorten this. I could have a half-hour conversation with you, and I'm going to know a ton about you. But I would say, hey, why don't we do this, Marissa? Why don't we? I know you're in San Joaquin. You're probably a busy lady. Let's jump on a Zoom. Let's sit down and have a conversation around and go over a buyer strategy session. What I like to do in there is cover the different. It sounds like you be in Auburn or Fair Oaks and really look and dive deep into some of the areas that are more prevalent for the horse property you're looking for. So I can give you some options there. We'll also go through the process, et cetera, et cetera. Does afternoons or evenings work better for you for that Zoom? I'm just going to try and set an appointment right there. I try and find something they're not familiar with. Does that make sense? Like the question I asked you was, are you familiar with the areas that are prevalent for horse properties? You probably aren't. So that's going to give me a reason that they're going to want to meet with me because I'm going to provide value on that.
Right. Right. Did that help, Susanna? The transition? It's all about getting the next appointment. Yeah, it's all about getting them in front of you, right? So asking the right questions to get them in front of you. That's it.
Don't call it an appointment ever. It's either a conversation or a strategy session, right? And
Okay.
I can send you if you send me Marissa, if you send me her email, I'll just send it to you. You can send it out
Send
to
it to
everyone.
me
I'll send
because I'm
you,
gonna send everyone everything.
yeah, I'll send you what I call our soft close, and it's not necessarily a soft. It's basically, hey, let's sit down, have a conversation. We'll talk about this, and this, and if it makes sense to continue the conversation, we will. If not, that's okay too. At least you'll get some good information. So when the time's right, that conversation to sit down and that ask is very appealing because it's a win-win either way. And if you practice it really, really good with it, it becomes second nature. A lot of times my conversations, I don't even ask them to meet. They ask me to meet because I've dug so much and talked and asked so many questions with them that, I mean, sometimes we're buddies even before we've even met off the phone. So
Yeah, you're developing a relationship, and then, you know, you can, that's when you can ask, do you know anyone else looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, right? So,
yeah.
yep, I've
That's perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That was a lot of, I'll wait
Okay.
for that. info too.
Anyone else have any questions for Jake while he's on?
Tell me more is the best question you can possibly have. So I know it's 3:00, so we got to wrap this
Thank
up
you.
and
Thank you.
get
Thank you.
moving.
If you guys need to book an agent strategy session, my link, y'all have it. If you don't have it, let me know. It's all over my social medias. So book a Calendly with me. I'd love to sit down, find out what your clear goals are as an agent, and get you to where you need to be next. Okay. That time, no charge, is free. My time is free. So utilize it. Okay. And Jake, thank you so much. Once again, I really appreciate it.
You bet. Talk to you soon. Hope you
Thank
guys
you,
have
Jake.
some
You're
fun.
awesome.
Okay.
Oh,
Have
thank
a
you.
blessed day,
Appreciate you.
everyone.